Welcome to Monologues by Hassie, where I'm going to be dropping unsolicited brain dumps from the depths of my grey matter. I'll talk about life, money, society, and self-development, plus whatever else lies up there, whilst hopefully not getting cancelled in the process. When I was about 25 years old, I made the decision to stop drinking alcohol for an undefined period of time. And my rationale was I had so many perceived disadvantages in my life at the time. I said I do not need another one impeding my progress because I know that there are many things that need to change, both with how my brain works and what I'm actually doing with my life. So I went pretty much cold turkey. I went from somebody who was constantly drinking at every university party. If I went out with my friends on the weekend, I'd be drinking, and I wouldn't just be drinking a little bit, I'd be drinking a lot. I went from this to absolutely nothing, to the guy who was having soda water and lime at every work party, every wedding, every birthday. I did a complete 180. And I said that I wouldn't drink again until I felt comfortable and happy with things I've achieved. And that moment actually came a lot sooner than I thought. So I was in Cambodia this month and I was actually taking a holiday. I spent the first 3 months of digital nomading around the world in Malaysia, and I was really happy with my progress and I was unwinding. I had my first beer like 2 or 3 weeks ago, which was great, but I didn't really properly drink until this one day I went on a boat party, and it was the absolute perfect moment. We'd already been fishing, we'd been snorkeling, I was meeting brand new people, I knew no one on that boat, and I was having a really good time. I was on a boat with a really great bunch of people, and there was unlimited whiskey. Now, to be clear, it was 20% whiskey, so it's very easy to drink, but unlimited whiskey, and you got one beer. More beers, you had to pay. That's besides the point. But I thought that this is the ideal time to drink, and it was. I had a great time. We were drinking whiskey, dancing on the boat. There was a party when we got off the boat at one of the hostels that was on the island, and it was a really great night, and I didn't go too overboard. There was no vomiting involved. I woke up with my mouth guard in. It was a very, very relatively sensible night compared to all the nights I've had drinking in the past. But here's the thing, and I wouldn't take that night back, it was a great one, but here's the thing I realized the day after, and even the day after that, is that the hangover, the low that I had in the next 2 days, I do not think justifies whatever highs I experienced that particular day and night. It simply was not worth it. And I think I can really reflect on this because I've almost gone 5 years without drinking up until last week. So I can definitely very clearly evaluate what was life like with alcohol when I was much younger, when I was below 25. I knew what life is like without alcohol and with very limited intoxicants between 25 and almost 30. And I have had this now one experience where I've been out on that party boat and I've drank whiskey straight from the bottle for a couple of hours and come back and had a few beers. But I was wise enough to switch back to soda water later in the night. And I can very definitively say that any intoxicants that we're taking, be it something like nicotine, be it alcohol, everything is like a buy now, pay later solution for dopamine, serotonin, and other neurochemicals in your brain. And I well and truly experienced this the day after and even the day after that, in that the lows I was feeling, I realized that I had paid more than whatever I gained in the short term. And I want you to think of it very much like this. It is like a credit card or a buy now, pay later solution, in that today you get something which you wouldn't have been able to. You got to unlock dopamine, you got to bring it forward. But now you need to pay this back at a higher interest rate. Your brain simply does not have these stores of dopamine and serotonin, and plus you're dealing with all the toxic effects of something like alcohol and your liver processing it. You do not have the ability to recuperate to your baseline dopamine levels the day after and the day after that. You have fundamentally borrowed from the future. You have taken future neurochemicals and you have brought them into today. And not only that, there's an interest rate on that. So you're actually net negative in the long run. Because it's just like borrowing money from the bank. If I take my credit card out and I go and buy something for $10,000, right? Money that I don't have today to go and spend on something frivolous, then I'm going to have to pay that back with an interest rate. Maybe by the time I end up paying that $10,000 purchase off, I've now spent $12,000. So I've spent an extra $2,000 in dollars that I could have not spent if I simply paced myself and maybe saved very slowly. And it's the same way with the happiness we get from intoxicants, drugs, and alcohol, in that what I experienced on that day is I brought forward a lot of dopamine, a lot of happiness, but then I had to pay that back in the lows. And when I look at the overall situation, I only brought forward $10,000 worth of happiness. So we're going back to the analogy of where I brought something, but overall, I've actually paid $12,000. So I'm $2,000 worse off. And after that particular day, I said, okay, you're done. You're switching back to soda water. And again, I've always said that it's not that I'm never going to drink, but I've realized for me, there are so many things that I want to do with my life and so many ways that I want to develop, and my brain really needs to be at its peak shape. I am an intellectual athlete, and that's not to say I'm smart, but it is to say that it is my desire to become as wise as I possibly can. And the idea that I am going to take out this debt on my neurochemistry and suffer for it in days where I really could be developing, I really could be reading something, I could be doing something, I could be creating something. It is simply not worth it to experience those lows for a very, very temporary high. I do not want to have a repayment schedule on my neurotransmitters. And so I will preface this by saying that this is not me saying I'm never ever going to drink again, but I've just realized, and because I can now very clearly analyze what my life was like, as I said, very early on when I was drinking regularly without alcohol, and then the effects of a single night of drinking after many, many, many years of not drinking, right? After almost 5 years of not drinking, having that one night. And again, it wasn't a bad night. It was much more sensible than any of the nights I had in my early 20s or my late teens. But nonetheless, the impact of that on days that had nothing to do with that party, had nothing to do with being on that boat, was simply not satisfactory. I am not willing to pay the price. I'm not willing to pay the interest on the buy now, pay later solution for our neurochemistry, which is intoxicants. And there are still intoxicants that I take. For example, coffee is a perfect one, which I've been trying to kick, which I still haven't kicked, which is another great example of that, right? It is probably the most ubiquitous legal drug, relatively benign, but you can definitely take it to where you are very much experiencing withdrawal symptoms when you don't have it, where you're addicted to it. And so there's many ways where we have these substances, but I think coffee is relatively benign. Maybe somebody wants to correct me on that. But I realize that when it comes to things like alcohol, when it comes to things like nicotine, I did try a nicotine pouch like 6 months ago and very much a similar experience. Whilst I didn't drink that particular night, it was a very short high, and then I was paying back a lot of interest the day after and the day after that. And so with all of these intoxicants, there's nothing inherently wrong with them. And I don't think anybody who drinks on a regular basis is doing a bad thing. And you have to keep in mind that when I did have this drinking experience, I wasn't drinking 1 beer or 2 beers. I was drinking a third of a bottle of 20% whiskey, which for somebody who hasn't drunk in a very long time is a lot of alcohol. It is a lot of alcohol. And it is not a normal experience. So this I would drink in the future, but I realized that 99.9% of the time it is not going to be worth it. Maybe when I'm in Paris next week, it will be the occasion to have a single glass of wine with my charcuterie board and my cheese. But outside of that, probably not. When I go back to the pub with my friends, it is probably going to be back to soda water. Why? Because can I justify the impact on the following day and the days after that for that one night? And the answer is almost 100% of the time, it is not worth it. Because if you're somebody who cares about the health of their brain, you care about maintaining your energy levels, and you know that the world deserves the best of you. And for me, I know that there are people who depend on me who currently live in this world, and there are people who will depend on me who do not exist in this world. And I'm not just talking about my immediate family and friends. And it is my duty to serve those people. So can I afford to be in a state where I am paying for the consequences of engaging in very high consumption of intoxicants like alcohol, like nicotine, like any other drug? And the answer is, it is not worth it for me on a regular basis. And that has only become more concrete through my reflection of the past 10 to 12 years, which half was spent drinking and the other half was spent not drinking. And so with this, I will leave that there. And I wish all of you listening to this great success on all your endeavors. You've just made it through another episode of Monologues by Hassie. It brings me great pleasure to know that you made it to the end. To listen to more episodes, subscribe on your favourite podcast app or visit monologuesbyhassie.com. Thanks for swinging by.